Jen, can you go ahead and advance the slide, please? So, but before I get into introducing the specific speakers from EWEB this evening, I always like to start with just a reminder that EWEB is a publicly owned utility. You are the owners of EWEB, and we manage assets on your behalf, over $1.3 billion worth of assets now, water and electric, to deliver some really essential services 24/7, 365. And that obligation is one that does not end tomorrow or the next day. We have to continue to be able to supply those essential services in perpetuity, next week, next month, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. And so we take that obligation and we take the stewardship of your assets and your money very seriously. We are governed, go ahead to the next slide, Jen. We are governed by 5 publicly elected officials who represent you. I did want to introduce Matt McCrae, who represents wards 1 and 8. He does live in the friendly area neighbors area. So he's joined us this evening. He'll be able to weigh in and wants to weigh in some later when we get into the Q&A and add his perspective to the issues that we'll talk about this evening. So appreciate Matt's joining us this evening. Go ahead, Jen. The program from EWEB this evening, we're going to sort of rifle shot through a few different subjects. Going to try to spend about 5 minutes on each one. We do have some subject matter experts on a number of several topics. So we want to talk and provide updates on our Leaburg Hydroelectric project. I know that was in the news, and we've made some decisions around the future of that project, and Jeremy will run us through that topic. We'll run through our integrated resource planning. That's on the electric side of the utility. That's how we plan to meet the demand and the loads on the electric side for the next several decades. And Ben Ulrich's going to run through that, one of the architects of where we are with that plan and what the next steps are there. Wally McCullough is going to run through a number of different topics, kind of everything drinking water from a resiliency perspective, including storage, emergency sites, sources. And so Wally will run through that. And then Juan will sort of back clean up for us and talk about some of our specific clean energy incentives. And like I said, they're going to spend maybe 5 minutes on each subject and pass it from one to the other. And then
I'm listening to the EWEB thing.
And then we'll spend plenty of time
on the friendly
answering questions and comments. And so with that, we'll just dive right into the subject here. Like, again, I'm Frank Lawson. I'm the general manager. It's really nice to be here. And with that, and by the way, there are a number of links published throughout the presentation. We have provided, Pam, I believe you have a copy of the presentation, and people, if they want a copy of it, they can certainly have it. And there's a number of different links to further information on all these topics. But with that, Jeremy, I think I'm going to pass it to you, and you can dive right in and then pass it to Ben from there. So Jeremy, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Frank. And thank you, Friendly Area Neighborhood and Pam, for the opportunity to discuss our projects and our plans and strategy going forward. And we are going to attempt, Jen's going to attempt to launch a little video that might work. If not, we'll just deflect and go straight into the slideshow. We have a really brief 2-minute video that gives a good overview. So let's see if this works.
Are you seeing a YouTube screen?
We have it, but it's not quite caught up yet.
All right. I think I need to do share computer sound. No. All right. I'm just going to try it. Tell me if you can hear it.
EWEB has decided to decommission the Leaburg Hydroelectric project. Structural issues in the Leaburg Canal forced EWEB to cease electricity generation in 2018. Launching an examination into whether EWEB should continue investing in the 90-year-old facility or to decommission it and get carbon-free energy elsewhere. The multi-year evaluation revealed that the heavy expenses to return to service would commit EWEB to a high cost of electricity for at least the next 40 years. Instead, EWEB could purchase electricity from the Bonneville Power Administration at a much lower cost. Closing the Leaburg facility would also lower EWEB's liability to future economic risks, as climate change and increasing regulations on hydropower generation raise further doubts as to the economic viability of the Leaburg project. Finally, decommissioning Leaburg also aligns with our customers' values to provide reliable service and protect drinking water quality while reducing costs. To decommission the Leaburg Hydroelectric project, EWEB will remove Leaburg Dam and return Leaburg Lake to river form, develop access to Leaburg Dam Road on the south side of the McKenzie River, repair the Leaburg Canal so it can convey tributary flows to the river, and work with neighbors who get water from the Leaburg Canal to find alternate solutions, with particular focus on supporting the Leaburg and McKenzie fish hatcheries. EWEB will conduct a similar evaluation of the Walterville Hydroelectric project within the next 10 years. In arriving at this decision, EWEB published updates at 20 board meetings, held 10 public listening sessions, and received hundreds of public comments. We recognize the community's support for Leaburg Lake. While it is not possible to continue obstructing the McKenzie River without generating electricity, we aim to preserve Lloyd Knox Park and to work with the community to design future recreational opportunities. Over the course of 2023, EWEB will create a Leaburg decommissioning action plan to understand upcoming requirements and milestones. It is clear this process will take time, and we anticipate at least 10 years of analyses before decommissioning activities begin on the ground. To learn more and to sign up for our Leaburg Updates newsletter, please go to eweb.org/Leaburg Canal.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Jen, for showing that video. And I know a lot of folks were sent this slideshow, so that link, eweb.org/Leaburg Canal, is a good way to find information on our project moving forward. And next slide, please. And this is just a quick orientation for folks just to see the scale of the project. It is a 5-mile long canal, and the project is located about 30 minutes east of Eugene up Highway 126. Next slide, please. And just a little bit of overview and background. The Leaburg project is a joint project with the Walterville project as well. And the project license expires in 2040, and there's approximately 17 years remaining. And since 2018, the project has been operating solely as a stormwater facility due to structural deficiencies of the canal embankment. And we initiated a strategic evaluation project in 2021 as a way to inform the EWEB board of all the issues and the options that we can have moving forward with the Leaburg Hydro project. And that entailed an extensive triple bottom line assessment, and a triple bottom line is looking at the project through the social, the environmental, and the economic lenses. Next slide, please. And early this year on January 3rd, we put forth a recommendation and a record of decision resolution to our EWEB board. And here's a general summary of what was in that recommendation, which was unanimously approved. It is to permanently discontinue electricity generation at the Leaburg project, remove the Leaburg Dam, develop southern access to allow the southern property owners, fish hatchery, the park, et cetera, have egress and ingress to the south side of the river, repair the canal for stormwater and conveyance, and that's also just to preserve as much naturalization as well. Mitigation opportunities for water rights for the fish hatchery and some of our irrigating partners. And we're also going to conduct a similar assessment of the Walterville project. As I mentioned before, it is a joint license, so there's going to be some negotiations and understanding of how the two will impact each other. And lastly, to identify opportunities and requirements for the board review, guidance, and direction as we move through this complex Leaburg decommissioning action plan. Next slide, please. And here's just an overview target roadmap. And, we put this in here just to kind of show, even though the video mentioned, it's going to be a long-term project and it might even go beyond 2040 with some things. This is our desired timeline, and it kicks off here with the star showing at our action plan being initiated here earlier this month. Preceding by extensive analysis, from 2021 and all through last year. And over the next 5 years or so, we're looking to understand what our license surrender or license renegotiation or amendment process is going to look like. In addition, in parallel to that, we're going to be implementing some near-term risk reduction measures, which are essentially just to ensure our stormwater conveyance methods that we're doing now remain safe until we can fully mitigate the project. And once we have a better understanding of our settlement and settlement negotiation and needs with our regulators, we're going to look to do our FERC approval and our NEPA process and our Environmental Species Act process for a couple of years after that. And then we're going to move into our design and permitting phase of the project in the early 2030s. And we're going to hope to start the decommissioning work, 2020, 2032, 2033, and that'll take us through to the end of the license period. And just want to caveat, there will be some near-term risk work, some grading, and some work that will be happening up there prior to our full-fledged dam removal work. And the next slide, please, which is just on to Ben. And so thank you, Jen and Ben. Thank you for your time. And I'm going to turn this over to Ben Ulrich.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I was jotting down notes, trying to be succinct. Like I've got 5 minutes here that I want to share what's going on with our integrated resource plan, which there's so much going on with it. So I challenge myself, like, what are the main 3 points I want people to take away from my brief talk is that, number one, EWEB is actively looking at our future electricity supply options, and we're making a plan for a clean and affordable electricity supply in the future. Number two, we just released our public draft of our integrated resource plan in December, showing one future potential pathway or future electricity supply, and we're calling that our reference case. And number three, we're reaching out to people today to let our community know about this process, letting them know about this document, and we're actively seeking feedback on that first draft to guide our next steps in analysis and our planning process. So those are my 3 goals. So let's see if I can cover them. So many of you might be asking, what is an integrated resource plan? And really, it's just a long-term planning tool where EWEB goes and we look out 20 years into the future and try and develop a resource strategy where we can plan where our electricity supply will come from. And this is an industry standard document for electric utilities. And what we tried to do on the slide was just give a high level overview of key elements and key approaches to that process of planning your future. And so it starts kind of at the top where we look at assessing our future energy needs and thinking about how much electricity does EWEB need in the future. And then you go to the next step and develop your energy resource option. So how much does a new wind farm cost, or a new solar array, or a new generating resource, or conservation programs. And so you develop that list of potential options that could meet your future energy supply. And then you put those all together and do an analytical process to look at your different mixes of potential resource options and find that best fit. And then you share those results with the public and get feedback and use that to guide further analysis to try and answer more questions about what might the best strategy be in the future. And then when you bring that all together, you'll develop an action plan. So it's a study that looks 20 years into the future, but we're using it to guide our strategy over the next 1 or 2 years and come up with some interim actions that you can do. And then the process starts all over again. And so EWEB is doing an IRP process every 2 years. And so we are just starting with this 2022 IRP, and we're hoping to share with the community. So you go to the next slide, please. So why is integrated resource planning important, or this IRP plan important?
And I thought I like charts and graphs, so I apologize for everyone if you don't, but along the dotted line there at the top represents EWEB's energy needs out into the future. So we start in 2022 here where we are today. We look out into the future and you can see that our energy needs are starting to grow over time. And a big driver of that is population growth, as well as the adoption of electric vehicles. So we're anticipating that as more people electrify, that you're going to slowly start to see that increase in demand really start ticking up in 2030. And then I think this also illustrates why it's important, because you'll see that our existing contracted resources, which are the bars there. So the big blue bar at the bottom is our Bonneville contract, where the most of our power comes from. The light blue represents the generating capacity of our local hydro resources on the McKenzie River. The gray are our existing thermal contracts. And then the green at the top, those are our existing wind contracts. And those are all set to expire over the next several years. The biggest one is in 2028 when our Bonneville contract expires. And so why it's really great that we're starting this process now to start to think about what is that best fit of resource mixes of resource options that can fill these gaps in the future. And so we're starting this analytical process now because it takes quite a bit of time to put steel on the ground or sign long-term contracts. And so the integrated resource plan, the goal is to figure out what our best strategy can be in the future. So you go to the next slide, please. And so lastly, we want to hear from the community. As I said, we released our first public draft and of all of our assumptions that we're using in our integrated resource plan. And it really, I think, tells the story of what we're trying to accomplish. And we also have in there our reference case portfolio, which represents one potential future electricity supply that is meeting our goals of being, we're 90% carbon free today, and the board has a policy of trying to be 95% carbon free by 2030. And so we've got one potential resource option that we're calling a reference case, and we're going to be doing more analytical work in the coming months, looking at different assumptions. So again, we just want to call people's attention that this process is going on and ask for their feedback on that initial set of results and look at what potential questions members of the community might want our analytical team to explore as we start looking into this. And so you can go and learn more. Please read the document. We spent a lot of time writing it. You can go to eweb.org IRP. So, and I'll pass it off to the next presenter, but thanks.
Thanks, Ben. This is Wally McCullough, Water Engineering Supervisor at EWEB. I'm going to talk a little bit about drinking water resiliency. Jen, can I get the next slide? Yeah, Frank mentioned, 24/7 delivery of our resources, and 24/7 on the water side, that's a commitment we take whole, and it's one of our focuses at EWEB. And it's challenging to achieve that, uninterrupted water supply, given whatever event may happen to our system. It takes effort. And, some of our challenges, and they include, we have a single source of supply. We have one treatment plant on the McKenzie River for all 200,000 of our customers. We have aging infrastructure, similar to a lot of other utilities, especially the mechanical, electrical systems. They just get old, need to be replaced. There's a big earthquake coming our way. It's going to hit one of these days, and a lot of our facilities are not designed with any sort of a seismic code, in existence at the time. Dealing with regulatory changes, keeping up on water quality and water pressures during all of our maintenance activities. They're all just various challenges that we are working to address. We're kind of taking a multi-pronged approach, but it really starts with addressing, actually back one slide, addressing our resilient spine in our system. If you look at the figure on the right, our single treatment plant, the Hayden Bridge plant on the McKenzie River is on the far right. The orange lines coming into our service area, which is in blue. Those are all our big pipes. It's what we call our this is our kind of the backbone of our system, the plan, the big pipes to bring water into our service area. They bring the water into the reservoirs, which store all of our water, our base level reservoirs. We have Santa Clara, Hawkins, everybody here knows College Hill, and East 40s, which is in construction. You can go on to the next slide. We've already, as part of rebuilding basically strengthening our resilient spine, we've spent probably 15 years rebuilding the Hayden Bridge filtration plant and establishing our very robust source water protection system. And now we're into our base level storage and transmission. Getting into some numbers as far as base level storage, we have 55 million gallons of storage split between Santa Clara, College Hill, and Hawkins. And this is in addition to 15 million gallons we have at our Hayden Bridge filtration plant. The three listed here, the Santa Clara, College Hill, and Hawkins, all have significant seismic and operational deficiencies and will not survive an earthquake. Our plan, basically, which we're implementing, is building 45 million gallons of new kind of distributed storage. When I'm saying distributed, that's like small tanks replacing big tanks, small ones that we can shut off and maintain while keeping the other ones in place and in service, just making our system more resilient and more robust. We have 15 million gallons of storage in construction at East 40th, and that's the picture on the right. It's a very substantial project. And we will have storage happening, similar storage with multiple tanks at both Hawkins and the College Hill reservoir sites. The big question is, which one? When is College Hill going to happen? Well, we don't have an answer for you yet. We will probably by this summer. We're kind of evaluating various operational costs and condition assessment issues and kind of taking a look in kind of a big picture look, and we will have an answer for that. But it'll be one of those two sites with construction anticipated to start in late 2024 or early 2025. As soon as we know something, we will be notifying the neighborhood groups and bringing them in on where they can have input on the site access and other landscaping improvements that are required for the site. Concurrently with our base level reservoirs, we're constructing and rebuilding some of our transmission systems. Some of those are associated with our reservoir sites, and some are just basically redundancy pipelines to make our system more robust. Next slide. Project we're really excited about is building a second water treatment plant on the Willamette River. This would be a robust plant that would be a redundant plant to the McKenzie River plant. It would not only provide redundancy to EWEB, but it would also provide kind of a regional benefit in having a new state-of-the-art robust plant in a municipal area. Helps everybody. We have interties with the Springfield Utility Board, the Rainbow Water District, so we can backfeed those utilities in case of need. The plant would be around 20 million gallons per day, just a little bit less what our current water right is. Expandable to about 30 MGD, and it's located with the intake site located just below the confluence of the coast and middle forks of the Willamette and Glenwood. And the treatment plant would be kind of set between I-5 and the Willamette River there. It is an expensive project for the water utility, probably our most expensive ever. It's baked into our long-term financial plans and the rate projections going forward. We are exploring various funding agent options. There's a lot out there. You just have to see if we qualify. Ultimately, we hope to have, we're beginning land use and permitting right now, and we hope to complete construction, have an operating plant in late 2028 or early 2029. But it really will depend on some of those permitting and land use efforts. But it's a project we're really excited about. Next slide. Last, I just want to mention some of our emergency water supply system. I know we've been up front of the fan board several times talking about emergency water supply. Started with some mobile distribution sites back in 2012, and it's kind of growing into these permanent established water distribution sites where we can deliver water, provide water to people in case we lose everything, our distribution system. The big earthquake hits, but we've got 5 sites in operation right now between Prairie Mountain all the way around over toward the Science Center and Lane Event Center. And we have 2 currently starting construction right now. One will be in conjunction with the YMCA just behind the Roosevelt Middle School. And the other one will be in the Churchill area. I think the distribution site will be at Kennedy Middle School. So those are happening, and they should be, we're hoping to wrap things up on all the sites and get them off, both the 2 new sites operational by Q1 of 2024. That's it for me. Next slide. I turn it over to Juan.
Thanks, Wally. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of our EWEB clean energy incentive programs that we have. I'm going to touch on our transportation electrification efforts and also on our solar program. Jen, next slide, please. Thank you. On the transportation electrification, we have programs that cover home charging incentives. We also have those on the commercial side, e-bike rebates, electric car sharing, community grants, EV events, and charging infrastructure that is owned by EWEB. Whenever we consider projects and efforts, we always consider availability versus accessibility. Even though an electric vehicle may be available, it's not necessarily accessible to everybody because of costs and different barriers. And so, for example, the electric car sharing and the community grants are a way to bring that accessibility to our customers. Through the community grants program, we awarded 5 grants for community efforts for electric transportation and micromobility. I'm going to touch a little bit on the first 3. So I'll have slides on those, but I'll touch on these other ones, give you a little bit glimpse of what we do. On the EV events, we support workshops that are right out of Eugene that provide education on electric vehicles for anybody in Lane County, actually. And then on the EV events, we also have test drive events, and EWEB charging infrastructure. We're looking at our next phase is going to be DCFC infrastructure and making it at affordable rates so that we can answer the question of metro charging for multifamily and providing solutions for that. So that's in development and looking at various technologies that we can use for that. Next slide, please, Jen. We have our residential home charging rebate, and that is a $500 rebate for level 2 charging stations or electric vehicle supply equipment. This is available to electric customers. And we also have staff that can answer any questions that you may have on this, like what should I be looking at, what kind of ports, what may be needed. And so we can also advise you on what technology you may be looking at employing. We do ask you that if you're considering installing a charging station at your home, to contact distribution engineering just to make sure that there's enough capacity coming into your home. And you can reach them at that email address. And again, this is available to all electric customers of EWEB. Next slide, Jen, please. Then we have our residential electric bicycle rebate. This has been an extremely successful program. We ended up 2022 with 971 bicycle rebates that we provided. And these are $300 for new bicycles that are class 1, 2, or 3. Pretty much it covers any electric bicycle that you can purchase. One note is that class 3 technically is not legal on bike paths and bike lanes, but that would be up to the city to enforce. And those are actually encouraged to be used, not in those routes. There are 2 rebates available per household, and adaptive e-bikes qualify. These are bicycles that kind of cater to individuals who may have some physical challenges, and so they're modified to their needs. And professionally installed conversions are also eligible. Next slide, Jen, please. The Go for Car Share program is a partnership with several utilities in Oregon and also Fourth Mobility to bring car sharing to our service territory. We have 1 location at Lane Transit District, and then we also have 1 at St. Vincent de Paul, and 1 more will be available in the city of Eugene on Broadway Street. This program has been well received. The location at Iris Place has had 1,100 miles driven with 43 trips. They opened up in May, and about over 100 hours of use. So this is where we're able to bring access to that technology to individuals who otherwise may not be able to buy a vehicle. So we're providing this outside of the vehicle ownership model. And our intent in the future is to deploy these at other affordable housing multifamily complexes. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, but Iris Place is an affordable house multifamily complex by St. Vincent de Paul. And through this program, the first 2 hours are free, but every additional hour is $4, which is very competitive compared to other models that are around $12 an hour for utilizing this. And once you participate in this, you're actually part of a larger network. So there's vehicles in Bend and other locations in Oregon. So you can go and use the app and not test drive, but use those vehicles as well. And one thing that I mentioned, all our transportation electrification programs are funded and supported by the Clean Fuels program. So it's not ratepayer funded. For the funding is not coming from ratepayers to support these programs. And next slide, Jen, please. Now a little bit on our residential solar program. We continue to have this program. It's 40 cents per AC watt outputs, and with a rebate of maximum rebate of $2,500. In 2023, we made some changes and added some requirements to help our customers be more informed as they make decisions with solar. And also we've seen some predatory tactics from some contractors, and we want to help our customers in making, again, a more informed decision. So solar installations must be completed by contractors that appear on the list from the state of Oregon, and they have to go through some requirements and certifications to do that. And also they must submit 2 bids as part of their application process. And again, to encourage them to be informed in their decisions. They can pick whatever bid they want, the highest cost, the lowest cost, the bigger system, the smaller system. But we just want to make sure that they're able to see the various opportunities that they may have in this program. And I believe that is all that I have on these 2 efforts. And of course, we continue to have our energy efficiency efforts for residential and commercial customers. And please visit eweb.org to learn more about any of these programs, including our energy efficiency, solar, and electrification. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. Really, appreciate that. And before we get into the questions, first of all, I want to make sure everybody can hear me. I got one of those, your internet is unstable warnings. And so I just want to, hey, Juan, can you give me the thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is Pam.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Pam. We have, there's been a number of major issues that we have had to work with our board on over the last few years. As you can imagine, the energy side of EWEB is changing dramatically from a resource perspective and also from a consumption perspective, and the electrification, and then the integration of renewables across the grid and transmission. There's all kinds of things changing. Decisions like Leaburg and our integrated resource plan. We are asking a lot of our Board of Commissioners relative to guidance and interacting with the public. And then on the water side, really the major projects that are both significant investments from a financial perspective, but also very impactful to neighborhoods, as you can imagine. And I wanted to give Matt McCray an opportunity, first of all, an acknowledgement of all the work that we've asked of our board, but also, Matt, I didn't know if you wanted to inject a few comments before we get into the Q&A. I did write down some of the questions already from people, and I don't know if we can dive into those in just a second. But Matt, did you want to inject a few of your thoughts about EWEB and kind of where we are and all the things that you're seeing happening?
Thanks, Frank. I'll just take a minute and say thanks to the Friendly Area Neighborhood for putting this meeting together and giving the EWEB team space to share with you what's going on. As you can see, there's just a whole bunch going on. And I don't want to take up time from Q&A. I know there's a lot of questions coming in. I am the board member for this area. So, as things come up in the future, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email address into the chat here. So if other questions come up or you have questions, or other comments that you want to share with me, I'm certainly eager to listen. But with all this expertise on this call, I don't want to take too much time. But thank you, Frank.
By the way,
Yeah.
we're doing fine on time. So
we're doing fine on time. Okay, great. Yeah, we wanted to be able to provide enough information to just stimulate some questions without having, we could talk for hours on each of these subjects, but I think it's really good if we can have some interaction. Pam, I have some of the questions written down and I can run through those. Does that work for you?
sure, yeah, and JJ was going to be sort of our question coordinator, so I'll defer to him.
Oh, if JJ wants to do that, JJ, do you want to start firing away and all sort of be the EWEB director and make sure that the right people are answering the right questions?
Sure. So I can either do this by just asking the questions directly, or I can call on people to ask their questions. Which would folks prefer?
Oh, why don't you start reading some, and if you mess up, we'll have people.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Okay, so I'm trying to find the first question that hasn't been answered exactly. Lena asked a couple different ones. Let's see. Okay, so we'll start with a start. So first is what's the future of smart meters for EWEB electric customers? I had one that failed and it was replaced with a non-electric smart meter due to shortage. The Assistant Secretary of DOE discussed the benefits of smart Senate hearing today, and there seems to be funding available.
Yeah, it's a great question. I know, Rod, did you want to weigh in on the status, and then I'll weigh in a little bit about how the meters fit in with our sort of strategic approach?
Sure. So I put in the chat, though, we're still waiting for more meters, and they've we have plans to continue. So we're about 75% installed on electric and about, I think, 30 or 40% installed in the water. So meters. In the meantime, we're taking a pause then to figure out how we integrate these systems, and we're also working on integrating some new system-wide computer systems. So all this is coming together. So we're working on the back, what we call the back end versus installing meters. But supposedly we're getting meters, our entire shipment, maybe even as early as October or something like that. The reason you didn't get another meter is because we are holding tight to the meters. To make sure we can manage storms and some emergencies and things like that. So apologize for that.
Yeah, I think this was so Lena, the DOE recognizes, and EWEB has recognized for a while, the importance that more precise metering can play in really how we align and synchronize the very sort of variable load and the variable resources. And so this has never been an issue with EWEB questioning the value of smart meters. When you heard about the supply chain issues, one of the things that came out of that was the integrated circuits. So the chips that go into cars, they go into all kinds of things that hit smart meters like it hit everything else. And we were in full deployment mode right when that hit. It was, we were about halfway. Well, I don't even know how far we are through COVID. I think COVID's going to just sort of regurgitate itself for a while, but yeah, we see a lot of value in it. We've always felt that it was just an issue of being able to get the materials, and once those become available again, we'll get back to the installation of those. But yeah, it was very much a supply chain issue for us.
I'd just like to comment, it was a really exciting hearing as far as Senate hearings go. There was a lot of good information coming out about energy, and there is, I think Arizona really utilized the smart meters in being able to control during wildfires and heat waves and things to not overload the grid. And it was a very interesting hearing as far as hearings go. So.
Yeah, there's the value is that even with storage on the electric side, so the energy side, even when you hear about the value of storage and batteries and things, and that can help sort of dampen and align things. But electricity is one of those rare things that is basically generated and consumed simultaneously. And so the surges that you get from consumption, we know that it's seasonal. We know it's different at 8 o'clock in the morning than it is at 12 noon or midnight. It varies based on weather patterns, both on the supply side and the demand side. And so having a more granular view of your system, which is what smart meters have, allows you to align those things. It does allow you to be able to really efficiently maximize the use of your generation. And so that's where the real value is. And for EWEB, that's millions and millions of dollars over the course of the life of our supply contracts. It really dwarfs the cost of the meters themselves. That's the return is the fact.
Oh, Frank, your sound went out. That was Frank's internet giving up. Anybody want to finish the sentence? Anybody from EWEB? No. Okay. Oh, too bad. Frank, are you there? Okay, we'll have to. JJ, should we go on to the next question? And
Yep. Let's go on to the next question.
hopefully
Okay.
we'll come back.
So the next question was kind of answered. It's kind of two questions. One from Lena, one from Margie. So the first is, will dam removal impact flood control / mitigation? And the second is, any chance of downriver flooding might happen with dam removal? If so, what kinds of mitigations do you need to be considered? So the partial answer was that the dam does not control flooding currently. However, I think that this question has another subpart to it, which is basically, will the process of removing the dam itself have an impact on flooding?
Yeah, I can jump in and answer that. Jeremy here, so thank you. So the way the dam is set up now, it's called a run of the river project, and it only impounds enough water to divert water into the power canal, which the same volume of water essentially goes back into the river. So there really is no flood risk with the dam in its current state, with the floodgates all the way open or in the removal process. And there will be some, diversions and, some heavy civil diversions going on during the construction. However, the construction is generally going to be in our low water season when there's not a tremendous amount of water coming down. Not to say that, we could have an excessive storm or something. The risk to the dam removal process would really be just flooding out the containment systems in the cofferdams. And the same volume of water is going to happen regardless. So there is no concern with the removing the dam on any downstream flooding. It'd be the same as if the dam was not there. The Corps has the flood control dams upstream in the Cougar and the Blue River area. So hopefully that answers, and if so, if not, just let me know.
Okay. All right, next question, also from Lena. With decommissioning of College Hill and Hawkins water storage, will there be sufficient water pressure for fire hydrants and fire suppression? Wildfire and increased density need to be considered. So I suppose that's for example, trying to put out a fire at one of those 10-story buildings, something like that.
Yeah, that's well, this is Wally. Well, we will always maintain the required fire pressure for fire, both pressure and fire flow for the fire hydrants in the system. And that's one of the things we're taking into account, is how we stagger the reservoirs in construction sequence. So we always have the storage available for that purpose. So.
All right, cool. So this next question seems like it's kind of related. Will the new reservoirs have automatic shutoff valves or some other mechanism of some such to preserve the water supply if an earthquake ruptures water mains? Will they also have a means for fire trucks to get water if there is no water in the fire hydrants, which during an earthquake is very plausible. So that makes sense.
Yes, when we're well aware of that, and all of our new tanks, even if we put new tanks in our upper level systems, they're all going to have automatic valves that we can shut off in case there's a any sort of an earthquake, or we're subscribed to the shake alert system also, with our upriver facilities. So we would get some signal that something's happening and we could shut off our reservoirs remotely on that. And not only would they be able to fill fire trucks, but they would, they would also be able to fill, say, water trucks if we needed to distribute water from those reservoirs to our emergency distribution sites. So the plan is to be able to hold water in case we lose our system in the new reservoirs. So.
Okay, just a personal question about that. So if these things happen in the middle of the night, is it an automated process, or is there some guy out there who flips a switch at 3 a.m.?
We have basically people 24/7 on call that do that all the time. So I think initially we would get a signal, something's happening, we could shut the valve manually. There are concerns, and there have been instances in California on some of the fully automatic valves, because if you shut them at the wrong time and your system that goes dry because water just drains away, well, under normal situations, and then you're in a boil water notice for you're shutting people off, lots of people. So
okay,
but yeah.
One of the things that relates to that, JJ, is EWEB is part of the shake alert system, which is designed to give you the P wave pre-warning of earthquakes. We have a couple of sensors installed on infrastructure that we have. I think it'll have to be both electric and water, because generators have the same thing. You don't want an earthquake to shut down your generators. But you also don't want to create situations where you're non-elegantly shutting things down in the wrong sequence, or at the wrong time, or too often. So as that system develops a little bit more, and some of our automation evolves, then we'll evaluate what you're talking about, which is what do we make automatic, and what do we rely on sort of human judgment for.
okay. All right, next question. This one's from Margie. Is there an increase in use of solar powers on residences? Does the electrical generation provide any kind of power beyond the individual owner? How does this form of generation affect overall needs? Is there any way this could make a difference? Okay.
So this is Juan.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Juan, I was gonna ask Ben to talk a little bit from the sort of value of solar from a utility perspective, and then kind of pull it back to what kind of things we're seeing at the individual level, which, maybe Ben, you can start on how it fits at a utility scale level, and then Juan, you can talk about some of the tools for sizing and how net metering and some of those other things work.
Yeah, so today the residential rooftop solar provides a very small portion of EWEB's total system electricity needs. So I put in the chat there, it's about 0.5% of our electric supply is coming from residential rooftop solar. Yes, those panels are contributing towards meeting resource needs. And yes, those panels absolutely help the most in the summer. I saw that in the chat as well. And then one thing I like to talk about too is that in the integrated resource plan, we're really placing an emphasis on getting affordable utility scale wholesale energy supply, which is you're able to deliver at cheaper or more affordable rates to your customers. So from a wholesale supply perspective, we have to factor the value of solar in when it's in our integrated resource planning process. It's competing with new wind resources, utility scale solar, and hydro, and all of our various other resource options. So it absolutely does contribute towards our supply, but today it's a very small portion, and most of it comes from hydro today. So I can pass it to Juan to talk about the residential rates and whatnot.
So the first question is there an increase in use of solar panels and residents? There's quite a significant increase. In 2021, we had 74 completed projects with a total capacity of over 512 kW. And in 2022, we had 168 completed projects with a total capacity of 1209, a little bit over 1209 kW. So quite an increase. The second question may be covered in this way. It's asking whether the power goes beyond the individual owner. It can be, because any excess generation that is not used to in your home will be sent back to EWEB, and then EWEB will purchase it at a rate that is about 7 cents a kilowatt hour. But you really want to maximize the sizing of your system by putting a system that doesn't sell so much to EWEB, because you want to offset your retail rate, which is about 10 cents. So you rather offset 10 cents and sell it back at 7 cents. In my home, for example, if I were to put a 3.6 kW system, using a tool that is actually available to our staff, they can help customers kind of find what is that sweet spot for sizing. So in my home, a 3.6 kW system would allow me to get 99% of my retail, 99% of that energy produced by this PV system would offset retail, and only 1% will be sold to that utility. So that's where I would maximize my benefit. I want 99% of that money to be offsetting the 10 cents a kilowatt hour that is retail, as opposed to selling it at 7 cents. So only 1% of that energy is being sold at 7 cents. And again, that tool is available to staff, so we can help customers understand what may be a system that would benefit based on their specific consumption. Not simply, it seems like this, but based on your consumption, this is what we would recommend. Thanks.
All right, so the next question up, this one's from Craig. I'm going to merge one of Margie's questions with it. So basically, the College Hill Reservoir is the highest elevation point in this part of the city. It is big and flat and a great place to use a radio in the event of a disaster. It's also a lovely place for recreating. And in fact, I'm looking at the Google Maps Street View of it right now, and I see a person walking with a stroller on it. So I'm assuming people use it for things like that. So my question, or this question or question/comment comes to the question of, as it gets decommissioned, will we retain some kind of a hard surface area to recreate and to put up a radio in the event of emergency? And the secondary question was, would it be possible to put up a storage locker of some kind where some designated person in the event of an emergency could potentially store some kind of emergency equipment, like mentioned radio?
Well, just the general question, we're going to be taking out and decommissioning the large reservoir, and it will be replaced by another 1 or 2 structures, same capacity, total capacity. Those structures, the new ones, due to there's current public health guidelines requirements, those will be off limits to the public. That said, it is our intention to work with the neighborhood to configure the site, the remaining area in the site. It's a big site, and just work with the neighbors on what's needed and desired there. And it was mentioned even probably a year ago about a concrete slab, and yeah, we could accommodate concrete slabs or just open space, grass, whatever, and we will just work with the neighborhood on kind of developing a master plan for that site. And it would just be a little, you won't have as big a concrete slab, but we can always put another one in somewhere.
Hey, Wally, it's really, so the way I would summarize is the tanks themselves are going to be off limits to the public, but there's everything around the tanks that we still had planned on public access. I actually think it's a great idea. And that's one of the areas that we've specifically identified that we want to work with the public on. What is that design look like from a recreational, from a landscape perspective? What's interesting to me, and I actually really like this idea, is especially, is there an opportunity to stack some benefits around emergency preparedness on that space. I think that's a great idea. We will, especially given, you know, like mentioned, it's sort of height and proximity to other things. I think that's one of the, you know, the areas of notes that we should take back when we're interacting and working with the public on sort of the layout and the design of the space around it. I think that's a great idea.
Right, and it's mimicking what we're doing at the East 40th Reservoir with the site there. So
right, I think
working with
even
the neighbors. So.
Even things like, you know, is there an opportunity to have a backup generator somewhere up there, or I mean things like that. I mean, it's a space where the public, I mean, everybody knows where it is. I mean, I went to Francis Willard Elementary School. I know where it is. So we can leverage that space around it for some, you know, some additional benefits. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So this is a personal secondary follow-up. If we're making structures as opposed to something like the current one, which is basically just big slab, are we going to I don't know, paint those or anything cool, anything like that?
Well, I guess the existing one, it has a flat slab roof, but it's still a 30-foot deep structure. So the new tanks would have the same, pretty much the same top height. They'd probably be a little bit deeper. Exposed concrete wise would probably be the same on, especially on the east side, and then with less on the west side. So
okay.
So I think what JJ is asking about is the sort of the artistic allocation of the site, and that, again, that's another area where I think, you know, we're not going to interact a lot with the public on the specifics of the design safety and the structural integrity and sort of the hydrodynamics of it. But, you know, landscaping, recreational uses, artistic considerations, I think those are things that we want to work with the public on.
yeah, and we will. So
Great. Okay, next question up. At least personally, I've seen a lot of people using e-mobility other than e-bikes around town. A lot of people in those monowheel things, a lot of people with e-scooters. I've even seen e-scooters that have seats. So one thing I was wondering about is the e-bike program at some point going to expand to other forms of e-mobility other than bicycles?
So this is one. We're looking at various ways to expand our electric bicycle program. Scooters and other micromobility is a component of that. When you consider an electric bicycle, the revenue that it brings on a yearly basis for an average bike rider, so not the one that is riding every single place, grocery stores, 365 days, it's about $5 or so a year. So it's a really small amount of revenue, and a scooter would be much less. Now, the great piece is that this is funded by clean fuel credits, so we're not asking ratepayers money to support this. It's a different funding source. So that allows us to look at more creative ways to improve electric mobility, such as e-scooters. But I think we want to get our electric bicycle program done well and correctly, and expanding it to, for example, limited income, looking at opportunities to do multifamily affordable housing libraries of electric bicycles to provide that accessibility outside of ownership. And a version 2, or perhaps even a version 3, might be e-scooters. It's also a little bit more challenging because e-scooters can go everywhere. So somebody can say, get it, and then take it somewhere else, go outside of our service territory. Of course, on an electric bicycle, somebody can do that, but it's a little bit more, that kind of method of transportation can stay within the home a little bit more. So yeah, definitely e-scooters and other forms of micromobility, the one wheels, the skateboards. I mean, you can keep on going. And so then how do you limit what is allowed or not? So it's something that we are thinking about, what would the parameters be? But definitely an evolution would be of other methods of micromobility to increase that accessibility.
Okay, I'm happy to hear it's expanding to low-income people, because that was also something I was wondering about. Because even if it's $300 off, those things are pretty pricey. Okay, let's see.
So JJ, I think the next question is from Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how was 95% carbon free for 2030 chosen?
Why not more?
I can go into detail if you like. Let's see. Why not more? Why not more or faster? What's the current percent of carbon free? I think that was 90%. I think someone mentioned that earlier. I thought it was already pretty close, so it seems not very ambitious. In discussions of switching from gas furnaces to electric heat pumps, of electrification, I've heard concerns from others about resiliency in case of outages. How is EWEB thinking about addressing concerns of people losing heat and stormwater during bad storms? Invincibility community centers, help overall system resiliency, microgrids or other resiliency, and IRP or others. Okay, sorry, to summarize that, how is 95% carbon free chosen, and how are we going to handle bad storms without gas?
Well, the reality of that, JJ, is Ryan just asked about 18 questions in there, and not, all of them really good questions, by the way. And I'll let Ben elaborate on a little bit of this first. So depending on the year, we're around 90% currently. It depends a lot on what we classify as market.
Oh, no.
Oh, there it goes again.
Ah.
Well,
Yeah, Ben, go ahead and
I can jump in there.
thank you.
So I think what Frank is speaking to is that, yeah, so today we're about 90% carbon free, and that's on a typical water year. Oh, Frank's back. Hey, Frank. You can correct me and tell me if I get this right. If I was tracking along the same lines as you, is that we're part of a larger market? Is that kind of where you were speaking to?
Yeah, I was going to say we've done some studies. So 2030, by the way, is not very far off. The cost to go from 95% to 100% is incredibly expensive. It's the studies that we have shown is, multiple times more expensive. The other piece of it is because we have to balance our system, there is a certain percentage that is reliant on the market. It's unspecified market purchases. So by going from 90 to 95%, we are essentially saying everything that we procure for our area is going to be carbon free. But we also have to recognize that there are times when we are buying and selling on the market, because that it's so variable that there is a certain component that is just not within that time frame. So 2030, not very far off. Something that is within the control that we have as an individual utility. Now, as we get through this, we'll see, and there's a lot of very ambitious goals, net zero by 2035 or 2050. Now, net zero means there's times when there is carbon in there, and then there's times when you have less than carbon and you sell it to somebody else. So, I'm a little suspect of the 100% clean goals because on a net, they almost always talk about a net basis, but we're really trying to do everything within EWEB's procurement power to get there by 2030.
Yeah,
and then, go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just going to add to that, and that, Frank, I think hits at the heart of it, is that affordability is a really important thing that we're weighing at the top of our minds as we think about trying to meet the greenhouse gas reduction goals. Electrification was one part of that question too. So we need to maintain affordable electricity and clean electricity so that people can switch away from fossil fuels and across our entire economy start to decarbonize. And so that's another really important element to our long-term supply planning, is not only do we want to be a little bit greener than we are today or cleaner than we are today, we want to see a grid that is cleaner than it is today. So the whole of the electric system getting greener. And then also we want to make sure it remains affordable as people switch away from fossil fuels and come to electricity to decarbonize. So we're trying to keep both of those goals in mind as we are planning our supply.
Yeah, we don't want to create a disincentive to electrify, I guess is from an economic perspective. Rod, do you want to talk a little bit about microgrids and resiliency within our system, since we are looking at that as well? I don't know if you want to elaborate on that piece of the question. you know, that's question number 13 out of Ryan's 16 that he bundled all together. Yeah.
Working our way through.
Yeah, no, thanks, Frank. As you probably know, we've got a couple places in town where we're looking at microgrids, specifically over the one most accessible at the grade school across the way. And so we're looking at a number of things that battery storage, for instance, and how that might play in with both storage of energy from solar panels, but also from an emergency power perspective. And so we're trying to Wally talked about the emergency wells, and so we're trying to pair those up. But as far as your power going out, you know, we can't make enough microgrids to probably power up every single situation. And so I think the other thing that we really stress is emergency preparedness. And I know there's some folks here that are very involved in that, and I've talked to a number of them. But being prepared as a neighborhood, and your neighborhood in particular seems to be pretty focused on that and taking care of neighbors. So, you know, if the power goes out and you have gas heat, it's likely your electric pump's going out. That's powering up your gas furnace. And so there is programs we have for backup generation, and Jen Connors is there's the resiliency, be prepared. So there's a number of things going on that EWEB sponsors and talks about, but I think that's kind of the bottom line, is be prepared. But we are looking at the other thing is both water and electric systems. We talk about our resilient spines, so trying to keep emergency power available to hospitals, and that's our main focus. Creating loops of power and loops of water systems, transmission lanes. So those are the big kind of pictures we're working on. So hopefully we can provide distribution points for people to come in the really big one that Wally said was coming.
Yeah, Ryan, you know, it's actually, you know, your questions in the forefront of our minds on real kind of several levels. Because each kind of disaster or threat has a different profile to it. You know, we have to worry about what happens if the Northwest grid goes down. Now, our system could be perfectly intact, and you know, things like a cyber attack on Bonneville could cause us to have issues. So we have to prepare, you know, from a resource level, from a transmission level. You know, Rod mentioned distribution, looking at redundancy. The microgrid at Howard Elementary is a combination of battery and solar and water pumping, for example, which would all those things would be important under certain kinds of scenarios. And so we then we have to look at it and say, you know, there's also some, you know, value. Then we're going to test this in our integrated resource planning. You know, what's the value to local resources versus remote resources, you know, that rely on the grid? We're going to have to test that out. How much is that worth? What kind of resources could be more local versus distributed? You know, you might not get the production out of wind that is in Montana versus the Columbia River, but how much transmission cost and risk is there between those two, for example? So it's a great question. It's one that we're sort of weaving into all of our different decisions, from a resource perspective to a distribution perspective. And I will put a plug in for, there's a Pledge to Prepare campaign on the EWEB website that allows you as an individual or a family to work on your entire preparation kit throughout the year. It has, each month you build this preparation, you know, the checklist, and throughout the course of the year, you're able to be really well prepared as a family. And it's not overwhelming. You do a few things each month, and then, you know, 10, 12 months later, you're a lot more prepared. So I'll put in a plug for the Pledge to Prepare campaign that we have.
let's see. Have we made our way through Ryan's questions?
There's a couple more questions afterwards from Lena and Ryan.
And there's, Margie asked a question that had been answered already, I think. College Hill.
The one I see from Lena is about what fuel sources predominantly used for backup generation in this area for critical infrastructure. So example, hospitals. The two that are the most common, one is diesel, and the other is natural gas or propane. You know, all those have options, but some kind of, they are all fossil fuel based. Diesel probably being the largest and most common. Some of that is because of the life of the fuel and things like that. You know, we are looking at some interesting options when you start to think about the uses of things like fuel cells going forward, which is another means of storage, either, you know, using hydrogen as a means to power your fuel cell, or some kind of interim chemistry. Formic acid is one, for example. Ammonia is another. And so those are some things that we're kind of keeping track of from a technology perspective, as well as a sort of a secondary market perspective from our renewable generation. And so we'll actually have a few more discussions around EWEB around some of those different kinds of backups, but most emergency generation backup is fossil fuel based at this point.
Let's see. Lena has a question about residential solar help during summer AC burden as our summers get warm. Oh, can increase residential solar help during summer AC burden as our summers get warmer?
Yeah, Ben, do you want to start with that one, and I'll provide some commentary?
Yes, solar absolutely can help, as you know, meet summer peaks, right? That's when, you know, when it's really hot outside and people are turning on the air conditioners, it's very correlated to that. But today, EWEB is very much a winter peaking utility. So our highest electricity needs are in the winter months. And so solar isn't necessarily the best resource for meeting that particular peak need. So I think it's, as we look to do our integrated resource planning, and we kind of zoom out and look at our wholesale, our bulk energy needs, solar plays a role, but we also have to look at other electricity resources and their ability to meet all of our needs, whether it be in the winter or in the summer. So it does help, yes, but it also, we need to factor in all the other resource options as well, and how they can complement each other to meet all of our needs throughout the year.
Yeah, I would just supplement that a little bit with, you know, if you imagine Eugene was Palm Springs, and so where you had a very reliable hot summer when your highest energy demand is when the sun is shining its brightest. The solar by itself, if we start to get closer to that point, the predictions in the next several decades is not that EWEB would become or Eugene would become Palm Springs, but we are seeing some growth in our summer peak. We will still expect to be a winter peaking utility for a number of decades, and that's going into our planning models. But solar panels by themselves will not help you in Palm Springs. They will help if you couple them with batteries, and not significant batteries, a few hours worth of batteries, because what's happening in California is there's a lot of solar energy being generated in the afternoon, and the utilities are kind of they're just kind of going, oh, nobody wants our electricity because everybody's generating their own. And then the sun goes down in the evening, people go home, that's still hot outside, they crank on their air conditioner, and all of a sudden there's this surge of energy demand from the utility, and it's actually has a name. It's called the duck curve, but it really just represents the fact that the demand on the utility, and I was actually in the California system operating control room a couple summers ago when the demand spiked multiple times, but in about 15 minutes when the sun went down and it was still hot outside. And so the battery, coupling a battery with that will definitely help the utility model going forward. And that's something that as a utility we'll have to look and see how we incentivize the combination of solar and battery, because that becomes very useful at that point. But you do need some sort of intermediate temporary 2 or 3, 4 hour battery storage to really make it useful from a utility perspective. But in the afternoon, yeah, it would cut your bill if you want to crank up your air conditioner in the middle of the afternoon when the sun is shining. It'd be very helpful.
Mhm. Let's see, we've got 5 more minutes. We're not going to get, I don't know if we're going to get to everything Ryan's asked. I was looking for, see if anybody else was asking a question. I don't think so. So
I think
JJ,
Tia made a comment about the YMCA, Pam, and I just, you know, it is the location where we're looking at another well. There's a little bit of a challenge when you get into South Eugene from a chemical water quality perspective. So we're probably going to have to add some kind of treatment onto that site. And also the volume in South Eugene is a little bit lower than some of the other parts when we're talking about wells, but that is in the plan. I think it you know, pairs nicely with the new location of the Y and also their partnership with Peace Health, and looking at this as what I would suspect to be a good place to go in an emergency. And so electricity, water, potential future backup for those types of things makes sense.
Yeah, and EWEB is working closely with both the Y and 4J on those sites, both, well, especially the Y at South and 4J at the Churchill site. But
and there's a question I'm looking for, JJ. I don't know if you're still looking at questions. I was just thinking about maybe trying to see if there's new people or different people asking questions. Here's one from Stephen Baker. Can you still opt out of smart meters?
Oh, I don't know, I missed that one. Let's see.
I'd like to know that answer. I heard bad things.
Anybody answer that one?
So yeah, Rod, do you want to, are you there?
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And Thea has a question. In addition to erosion control, what other measures are needed to reduce turbidity and debris from wildfire denuding the watersheds before the supply gets to the treatment plants? Wow.
Now that's a great question about just our whole watershed protection program, which there's a couple of different stages. Certainly after a wildfire, the organics that and the chemicals put you a little bit more at risk for things like cyanotoxins. But we also have programs to work with different foresters and farmers up within the watershed on their use of chemicals, for example. And so we also are working on projects to act, this is going to sound a little strange, but to slow the river down. There are no.
Oh, no.
So just to continue on, there's a couple, we're working with McKenzie River Trust and a couple of organizations up there to work with land. All that timber that got cut, so we're trying to buy spots of land to refurbish those so the silt and stuff doesn't come off, because that's where a lot of stuff is coming. And then as Frank was mentioning, there's basically wildlife river restoration projects where they're cutting down trees and spreading them across and actually spreading out the water. There's some really remarkable data that we've seen where those slow down spots are dropping out their turbidity like crazy, and compared to some of these other streams that are coming in from the sides with the clear cuts on them. So, or the fire damage. So there's a lot of work going on up there. It's pretty exciting and pretty interesting.
Wow.
In fact,
Thank
if
you.
anybody ever drives up the 126 at Finn Rock, you can kind of look over and you see all the logs in the stream. It's really evident of a work in progress to slow down the river at that point.
The first time I drove by it, I thought it was a mistake. It's actually on purpose. Because it kind of looks like a mess.
Not big beavers at work, huh?
Right. Pam, do you mind if I ask Matt McCray if he has any final thoughts
Yeah,
to?
we have a couple minutes left. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't. I appreciate all the questions and the wide variety of interests and the way that folks in this neighborhood are paying close attention to what's going on, both with water and electricity supply. That's all. Just appreciate y'all hosting the forum and giving us time to answer questions. And yeah, thanks, Frank.
We really appreciate you all
Our
coming.
children trust. And the city and really knows environment stuff.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who that was, but anyway, thank you, Jen. And thank you, everyone. We've come to the end of our time, and
Thank you.
Our next general meeting will be May, and will be in person if you're brave enough to come out. And anyway, okay, thanks again. And we have recorded this. If you didn't catch everything, we can supply recording. Okay.
Great discussion. Thanks for all the information.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Good.
Thank you all.